Hi there, my name is Kelly Bennis, and I'm going to walk us through what does it look like to establish a formalized release process with a new team or new space that you might be walking into wearing your Scrum Master or Release Manager role. What does it look like to organize a team, get it all structured so that we can have a successful release? Thanks for joining. Alrighty, so we're going to walk through this together. First, we're going to set some clear expectations. So we're going to get our whole team together and we're going to say, hey, friends, we got to make some tweaks here. We haven't been able to get a success in our releases as much as we've liked. So let's give this a shot and see if we can adjust together and improve. So first, our goal together is to have clear expectations when we are planning our whole release process in our sprint. So we want everyone to have a complete confidence before we ship anything to production. So what are we going to do while we're organizing it? First, we're going to make our goals really clear. So everyone is empowered to ask questions, to raise concerns, and the goal is to raise them as quickly as possible. So hopefully everyone in your space has a team chat or a space where they're organizing this. Everyone can communicate in real time throughout the day. Everyone is empowered to say, no, we can't handle an out of cadence release at this time or something that's coming in sideways in the middle of this cycle or process because it would be too disruptive to the entire, would jeopardize the entire release. So everyone's empowered to say that, and that can be something you have to be very protective of for a little bit. Then you can define cherry picking for your team. So if a production level bug comes in, a lot of times you have to stop what you're doing, adjust, tweak, get that release out, but that can cause a disruption in your typical standard release cycles. So putting really specific guardrails in place for that is very helpful. And then letting everyone know that their feedback is a gift. So we can tweak and we're going to all own this together. We're just letting the release manager kind of put some basics in place. So next, I would walk through the release, like an example calendar of a 2-week sprint. So if our sprint is ending on a Friday, ideally then all of the stories are tagged by your product owner that we hope to be in the next release cycle. So if our next sprint starts on the 29th here, we're going to, during that time, we're going to have our sprint planning call, but we're also organizing our release. So we've got everything tagged. Everyone knows what those tags are. And our goal is to merge by the end of the day, everything that we want to have in our next release. The second day, the team checks in and they make sure that everything's been pushed to the next environment so that testing can begin. And then we communicate with our SDETs or Qt quality assurance folks that the testing can begin. And this is our ideal timeline. So testing can then begin day 2 of the sprint starting around noon. And testing continues throughout the entire rest of the 2-week cycle. We do ask, here's that cherry pick release date that we're asking the team by Friday. If there's any failed test cases or anything that we want to tweak, we're going to give the team 2.5 days, maybe 3.5 days to add another PR in to tweak something that's failed so we can make an adjustment and continue with this full release bundle versus having to maybe kick something down to the next, like further down the road to the next release. So we're going to allow cherry picks until this time in our release cycle so that we can handle that. We know that we can, I'll usually test the rest of the release plan with that time frame in place. So then the second week of the sprint, we usually get the whole team together and we're still going to then, your release manager's preparing paperwork for approvals, whatever that looks like for your organization. That'll be different everywhere you go. But then you can really focus on making sure that everyone agrees on the full testing plan. So what does this look like to test in our lower environments? There's going to be maybe some differences with how you test in production, just based on making sure that there's no disruptions. So, and approvals are received for the whole team. So you might need to get in other people other than your team to help with releasing different pieces. If there's usually more specific safety measures in place for having access in your production environment. So the team will review the whole testing plan during this time, and then testing continues. And you usually have the whole rest of the week if you're planning a release per sprint for your team to finish release testing. And ideally, it's done by the end of the day here. And then you would, in this scenario, we're planning for a release 2 Mondays later. And we would start with a go, no go call. So everyone's going to get together, review how ideally we have a full suite of past test cases that are tagged and put into queries and understood and tested by your SDETs, your QA, your team members. And everyone can review those. And hopefully, everyone's been working to make sure that there are no failures throughout this whole time. So, once those are all passed and approved, then we talk about changing any of the order of our deployment plan and making sure that that's smooth and ready to go and everyone has confidence. If there's a lack of confidence in any way, we would not deploy. But the goal is to always get to a place where everyone's confident to be able to release. Hopefully, then during business hours or after business hours, depending on the level of scrutiny that your product is going to be put under. So that's your standard calendar. Next, I would talk about expectations per role for each team member. So this is basically similar to what we walked through above. Monday, week one, Tuesday, week one, Friday, week one. We did already kind of talk through this, what all the steps that we expect to have happen. So this is the same thing, put in a different format. So let's skip down to roles and responsibilities. So I'd say, everyone's going to have a different piece of ownership to make our releases a success. So let's walk through that. And if we need to tweak some of these, we can certainly do so. But let's start with this and then go from there. So first, myself as your release manager and scrum master, this is what you can expect from me during these next couple weeks in getting this release out the door successfully. I'm going to communicate our progress on each of those steps that we talked about in that calendar. I'm going to say, oh, we can no longer handle a cherry pick. We've agreed that we can't handle it past week one in our release cycle. I'm going to complete all of the approval paperwork necessary to get this ready to go. I'm going to communicate any progress and manage our whole process together so everyone knows where we're at in the cycle together. And then if we need extra people for some of those permissions issues we chatted through that, we might need a specific architect or anyone else to support the team during this release cycle, I'll be in charge of getting them on plan for that release. So that's what I will cover. Then next, our product owners, what we'd love to see them own in this cycle is tagging all of our user stories so we can get our release query complete. We're going to ask them to draft. We use a tool called Loop to get everything fully documented that we're going to release. So we ask our product owners to put that together. They're going to communicate any launch darkly flag changes if we're going to be testing and flipping things on and off, and they're going to handle the communication on that side. They're also going to evaluate any regression bugs for priority. So really determining do we want to get that cherry pick bug kind of in that first week, or can we not disrupt the release cycle at all, and can I just go out in the next standard release process? Next, we have our SDET or quality assurance or tester. That role, we're going to ask to do all of our regression testing, to report on it, to report when those test cases fail, when there's blockers. And then they're going to communicate to me when testing is completed and successful, so I can do all the final approval paperwork. Our architect, a little bit more hands-off, but they're going to help make sure any of those launch directly flag changes are in place. If there's API secret keys that need to be adjusted, they usually have higher permission level than the team and are there to support. And then they've got, usually we can, in loop. We will assign different people to different things. And if I throw that person's name on anything, we ask for that person to own that. Next up is our DevOps engineer. We're going to have them own their own section of the release plan. So we'll also put their name on different things as well. And typically their role is to move all of the team's work to that next environment. So if we're going from the first lower level development environment, then we're going to go up to certification of their second testing area. They also will ensure coverage if usually you have a DevOps team that's many people that can support day and night and can be in multiple places at once. But they're going to be ensuring there's coverage from someone if they can't make it. Our developer, our team member, they're going to be available to be on that release call. I'll definitely assign different people as needed, depending on what's going out in the release and who's most familiar with the code that is going out. They're going to fix those regression bugs that our testers raise up in the middle of the cycle as needed, and they're going to complete those cherry pick PRs or pull requests. Our associate manager, usually someone who's working outside of the team, but typically has the final authority in this space. They're going to coordinate any hot fixes. So if there's like a production level bug that needs to be addressed kind of outside of this process, they're gonna have the ultimate authority to say we have to pause what we're doing, we have to like prioritize this, and then we can go back to our regular procedures. So they're going to work through that. They're going to approve cherry picks when necessary, and they're going to coordinate any forced updates that we have to kind of readjust for. Finally, we'll have our product manager. They usually are just going to be a part of the paperwork approval process and the final decisions for, yes, we can handle this release getting out at this time. And then SRE, this is a group of people that usually monitor the health of our whole system. And so we'll give them monitoring workbooks and tools so they can monitor our release after hours or maybe throughout the night if we're releasing it really late. So they're involved as well. So that's a little bit of the roles and responsibilities. We'd walked through step by step a little checklist, and then your standard 2-week sprint calendar, and maybe some guardrails to kind of keep that in place and keep your team on track. So yeah, and then I would check back in at the end of a sprint after we got this out, after we had a successful release, and say what worked, what didn't work, how can we adjust and make this better. So thanks so much.